We are kicking off your money month here at BNN Bloomberg, of course, ahead of the March 1st RRSP contribution deadline. We've been asking you, our viewers, what are your plans when it comes to your RRSP? Do you plan to max out that contribution? 25% of you said you'll do that. Contribute some, 16%. Not contribute at all, 38% of you. And contribute after you've put money into your TFSA. That is 22% of you. So there's the big question right there. What's the better option for you, the RRSP or the TFSA? To help answer that question, we're joined now by tax expert Tim Cestnick from our family office. Great to see you again, Tim.
It's good to be back. Thanks for having me.
It's that time of year when you and I get to talk about these matters on TV. So you saw our poll, what people plan to do. Obviously, with the RRSP, they're going to hear a lot about it this month because we are heading up against that deadline.
Yep.
When you're looking at your finances and people are trying to figure out what makes more sense, what's the criteria when you're trying to decide between the RRSP or the TFSA?
So the first thing is, when you get to your retirement years, the ideal scenario is to have actually money in both, because then you have flexibility to make the decision: do I want to take out some taxable income this year or non-taxable, or maybe some of each? But you know, you have to make decisions every year about how much you're going to put into which plans. And if you don't have enough to put into both plans, then it really comes down to your life circumstances, your life situation. Look first of all at your tax rates. So are you going to pay higher tax rates now? Are you paying higher tax rates now or in retirement? Because the bottom line is, if you were going to pay higher tax rates in retirement, then when you pull money out of an RSP, it's going to be very highly taxed. And so for pulling money out of a TFSA, it probably makes more sense at that point in time. If it's the other way around, you think your marginal tax rates will drop when you're in retirement, then it actually makes the RSP look better today, because you get a tax deduction today at a high rate, and you don't pay, and you're paying, you know, so you're pulling money out at a more favorable rate later. So that's the key thing I look at. But there's lots of other things you can look at. Greg, for example, are you younger? Are you new in your career? Probably have a lower income. TFAs probably make more sense at that stage of your life. Whereas if you're older, more established in your career, earning a higher income, RSPs may benefit you a little bit more. Maybe you're a senior and you can't put money into an RSP anymore. You know, when you're beyond age 71, you can't have an RSP. So maybe the TFSA is the only option you have. Or if you're saving for short-term consumption. I was reading recently that 34% of people who have RSPs actually pull money out before they're 71 and not for retirement.
Like you said, then that's where you get hit, right? I think people get enticed. And I know that when I was in my 20s, I got enticed into the RRSP, not because I was worried that I'd be in my 60s or 70s one day. Who thinks that way in your 20s? I wanted the tax credit, right? The tax deduction.
Now, right?
And there weren't TFSAs back then when I was a young man. But yeah, you got to think about, what do I need this money for? Why am I putting it away? Am I putting it away
long term?
Because I want to get it at it in my 30s and 40s? Then maybe you need a TFSA.
Exactly. That makes really good sense. I think also TFSAs are good for collateral. You can put them up as collateral for a loan, whereas RSPs you can't do that. I think also on the RSP side of the equation, if you are wanting to pay down debt, maybe as well as saving, RSPs can make sense, because you put money into an RSP, you get a tax deduction, maybe it comes back as a refund. You can use that refund and then pay down some debt as well, which the TFSA won't really, won't provide that refund. So it really partly depends on your stage of life, I think. Are you going to need the assets during your lifetime? If some people have got enough saved, if that's the case, then maybe a TFSA makes more sense, because with an RSP, you have to make withdrawals. They're mandatory, right? Not with the TFSA. So the problem with the TFSA, of course, is that you can only put so much in. RSPs have bigger contribution limits, and so chances are you're probably going to need an RSP no matter what. But having some of both makes good sense.
What's the danger if you do go over that RSP contribution limit, though?
So you're allowed a certain amount of over-contribution. It's not a lot, a couple $1,000s without any kind of penalty. Beyond that, you start paying 1% a month of the excess contribution in a tax, effectively. Now, it is a voluntary thing. You got to file a form and tell the government you've over-contributed, but they're getting better at catching that. So don't just plow as much as you can to RSP beyond the limits you're supposed to use.
And of course, it's not a huge mystery to know what your contribution limit is, because when you get your tax, statement back after you file them, there's a line that basically tells you, here is your contribution limit for the coming year.
The notice of assessment will tell you that. Also, to keep in mind too, if you're a U.S. citizen, you got to file taxes in the U.S. every year, even if you're living in Canada. And TFSAs don't provide tax sheltering to U.S. citizens in the U.S., on the U.S. side of the border. So you're going to pay tax in the U.S. on that income. So TFSAs don't always work for U.S. citizens.
Now, the tax-free savings account, are you still surprised to the extent that Canadians aren't taking advantage of that vehicle?
You know what? I'm surprised. I'm not surprised that more people don't take advantage of it. I think that the numbers of people, last statistics I saw was about 10% of Canadians are maximizing their contributions to their TFSA. The limit's not that high. I mean, it's $6,000 this year. So I think it's a good idea to try to maximize your contributions there. Not enough people are probably doing that, and maybe it's just because you got competing interests, right? Do you pay down your mortgage? Do you contribute to your RRSP? Do you put money into TFSA? And those are not always easy questions to answer.
All right, Tim, pleasure to have you here.
Thanks.
Tim Cestnick is a tax expert from our family office.